The atheist's most powerful weapon, the one feared by many believers, avoided as though it could tear their faith to shreds if faced head-on, the problem of evil. Premise 1. If God exists, he is all-loving and all-powerful. Premise 2. An all-loving, all-powerful God would not allow evil or suffering to exist. Premise 3. Evil and suffering exist. Conclusion, therefore God does not exist. Like the Death Star, it's a huge, overwhelming power that looms over everything, threatening to destroy enemies in one mighty blast. So what do we do about it? It's enormous. It's covered in turrets fitted with turbo lasers. It carries an army and a fleet of TIE fighters. On the face of it, it looks indestructible. But we have our own fleet. Our X-Wings are more than a match for the TIE fighters. Our Y-Wing bombers can use their torpedoes to knock out the turrets. Many Bothans may die going up against the Imperial stormtroopers, but we have so many ways to chip away at the Death Star's impressive armour. Bit by bit, we can take out parts of the space station here and there. Boom! Free will means most of the evil in the world is caused by men, not God. Kapow! God uses the evil in the world to bring about greater goods. Smash! Sometimes suffering lets us learn lessons that happiness will never teach us. There are so many theodicies and ways to explain how God and evil and suffering are completely compatible. So basically, all of these responses go to show that premise 2 of this version of the problem of evil is not necessarily true. Even if someone is not entirely convinced by one answer or another, it goes to show that there are plenty of logical ways to figure it out. The problem of evil proves nothing, but attacking the Death Star by trying to take out each turbo laser and each TIE fighter individually is not the best way to destroy it altogether. It's one way to try, sure, and eventually it could be effective, but the best way to take out an Imperial superweapon is to hit the main reactor. One attack on the weak spot would make the whole thing come apart from the inside out. There would be no point going for the outer defences if you could launch a successful strike on the core. So how do we do that? Where's the exhaust port no larger than a Womprat? It's actually easier than that. The problem of evil has its own built-in self-destruct mechanism.
I've placed a weakness deep within the system.
Atheists use the problem of evil as their trump card to prove that God does not exist. Let's ignore that it actually only deals with a specific type of all-loving God and says nothing about an ambivalent deist God, and actually does little to help the overall case for atheism and what have you. However, they include the premise that evil exists. Now that is a vital premise in another argument, the moral argument. Premise 1. If God does not exist, then objective moral values do not exist. Premise 2. Objective moral values do exist. Conclusion, therefore God exists. Premise 2 is that objective moral values exist. When someone tells you that evil exists, they're telling you that they agree with premise 2. Evil is a value you can put on a moral act. Some atheists might change the premise to be that suffering exists and that God wouldn't allow suffering. It's the same flaw. They think of suffering as a bad or an evil thing and want to make that point, but they have no way to ground that opinion in any objective truth. We all think suffering is generally bad, but Christians are able to anchor that belief in the objective standard that is God. So, if an atheist offers the problem of evil, they're giving you the moral argument for free and proving that God exists. And that's funny because it's exactly the opposite of what they intended to do. The only escape hatch they have from the moral argument is to say that evil doesn't really exist objectively, it's just their opinion. But that also destroys their problem of evil, because they need the premise evil exists to be objective. Either way, this one bombshell utterly destroys their Death Star in one blow. And wouldn't you know it, the one religious guy on board the space station warned them all that it was no match for the faith.
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
The atheist empire's mightiest weapon leaves itself wide open for utter obliteration from one well-placed strike. Sure, Christianity might still want to figure out effective strategies to knock out turbo lasers and make their arsenal even stronger, but within the worldview, they are just a hypothetical problem. When push comes to shove, all they have to do is hit the Death Star's main reactor. May the Force be with you. Amen.